Hello. Welcome to another session of drawing. But before I get into the drawing of this painting, because this is my paper, my canvas, I'm gonna talk to you about why I like to use paper and all that. Right now my setup is a big piece of paper. It's actually, let me move this out of the way, 9 by 15 and a half. And that's important. I want to bring up the reason why. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I like to use paper, and this is not so straight. So I could just, go out and buy a canvas and paint on canvas. I've done that for years. I could go out and buy a sheet of canvas and cut the canvas down and paint on that as well. The reason why I like paper is because it's inexpensive. This is an Arches oil paper, but I've gessoed over it, so I pretty much killed the process of the whole oil paper itself. I mean, literally you can use any paper as long as you gesso over it or whatever. I've used cereal boxes. Cereal boxes work really well because if you, actually I want to grab one. If you paint on the printed side of a cereal box, what's really nice about it is that, here's a cereal box here. Of course they're a bit smaller. If you paint on the printed side of this, not the inside, what's nice about that is it doesn't bow the, it's more like it's not a cardboard, but it's like some kind of board. But if you gesso or paint on top of it, well, you'd want to gesso it. It doesn't bow the material that much. There's certain papers that you would buy that you would try and use that are really flimsy, and if you put gesso on them, they just turn into, a big wavy sheet. I like the Arches because it's really thick. There's also, not Strathmore, but Stonehenge also makes an oil paper that's really nice. And Canson makes an oil paper that's not nice. And I'll talk to you why on that. But you can use almost any paper. I've used the back of, the pads that this paper comes in. Just use the back of it. It's like a chipboard or whatever. I think they used to call it that cardboard back in the day. But what I like about using paper is once I have an image that I want to work from, an idea, and I take a picture of it, and I use Photoshop to work up the composition I want, how thin it's going to be, how wide, whatever, the size of it, I always end up with a size that's completely different than anything you can buy in the store. I mean, 9 by 15 and a half, you can't buy this in a canvas in the store. It's not going to happen. You can probably get someone to make it for you, but I like that freedom. And then you're probably asking, well, how do you frame it, Chris? Because that could be a pain. And yes, it is a little bit of a pain. It's a process. It's not a little bit of a pain, it's a pain. Okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a process. I mean, getting the painting down on paper, and if it fails completely and you don't want to do anything with it, you've not used up a crazy canvas, linen or whatever that costs a lot of money or whatever. And you could treat this just like canvas. Like, I've gessoed this before and I've sanded it down, especially with smaller paintings. You want to make sure that there's as little texture as possible unless you want that. If you're going for detail on a very small canvas, you want a very smooth surface if you want a lot of detail. If you have like all canvas ridges or the paper ridges in there, your detail is going to be obscured by the ridges in the paint anyways, especially if you paint thin. I paint pretty thin. Sometimes I get really a lot of impasto on there, but not so much. So let's say, here, I'll show you one that's finished. This one is hanging up, so I did this one a while ago, I don't know, a week or so ago. This is a painting I finished. This is on paper as well. I'm not sure which paper this is on. This is not the Arches paper. It doesn't feel like it. I'm not sure what paper this is on. Maybe it is the Arches. I think it's the Canson paper, honestly, which I don't like. Anyway, but this is what it looks like after it's painted. Piece of paper, there you go. And I can hang it easily like that, wait for it to dry. This one's already dry. But the difficult process is the framing. But hear me out here. I've come up with this. So this is an older painting I've done. This is called Hiding. And I'm bringing this painting in particular because I like a lot of the texture, a lot of the colors and stuff that I've used in here. Look at those blues and grays. Actually, there's no blue in here. It's just a lot of gray. Oh man, I need to pull that into this painting. But I like the way this looks, and I'll probably use some of what I did here in this painting I'm going to work on. But this is painted on paper, and you can see there. Here's the side of it. You can barely see like this white edge of the paper where I've cut it off. And what I do is I build these panels myself. And you're like, holy crap, I'm not going to do that. It takes some tools, definitely. The ability to work with those tools. And if, you know, honestly, I've been watching the comments. If you see this and you're like, wow, that's really cool, I want to learn how to do this. If I get enough people to comment and say, yes, please show us the process of how to build these panels, then I'll show you. I'll do the whole video for it if I get enough people asking about it. At least 20 people have to say yes on that for me to make the video. I'll probably end up making it anyways, but way in the future. But I'll fast track it if a lot of people ask me to do that. But this is the cheapest piece of plywood I can buy, really thin plywood, and then 1x2s all the way around. I have a miter saw where I just cut 45s, I glue it, sand it, do 2 coats of black on the back. One is a glossy black, which works out perfectly. It doesn't show up like any marks or anything. And then I do little ice screws on either side with a 10-pound wire. And the best thing about this is when it is displayed on the wall, when you hang it on a wall, it sits perfectly flush to the wall, has a very contemporary look to it. And if you hate the white edge around there where it's showing the thickness of the paper, the inside of the paper, you can take like a Sharpie or something and just go along the side and cover that up. Yeah, that's what these paintings end up as. And I do my art every day, and I work for a few minutes, half hour or so in the garage building panels for all the paintings I make as well. Is it an arduous process? Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot harder than actually going out and buying something, but you get the exact size that you want. And I think that's what's really important about it. That's what's really nice for me. Now, I mentioned 3 different papers: Arches oil paper, Stonehenge oil paper, and the Canson oil paper. I hate the Canson oil paper. Why do I hate that? I don't know if you can see this on the video, maybe if I turn it a certain way. One thing you have to be careful about, and the Canson does this horribly. Can you see this big bubble here? I got 2 of them or 3 of them. More of them. Bubble, 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 bubble. So when I glue the paper to this panel, I use a pH balanced glue. By the way, the back of these pieces of paper are gessoed as well. So I use a pH balanced glue, scrape it all over the whole top of it, put the painting on there, and I try and smooth out as much as I can, line it up, blah, blah, blah. The Canson always bubbles up. Arches does not, Stonehenge does not. Stupid Canson. And it's a good way to, like, if you like a painting, you get to this very last process and it's ruined. You got these bubbles and it kind of sucks. I really hated that. I'm trying to show that off. Maybe you could see it there in that way. Bubble, bubble. So that's really annoying. Something to watch out for. That's that process. That's how it goes from here all the way to a finished painting and then hung into a gallery and hopefully sold. All right. I worked on the drawing of this yesterday. Here's the drawing. Painting's going to be different. As you can see, the ratio of width to height on this drawing is much different than what I have. What I'm planning on doing is moving it down really far and having a big black space up here. The previous painting I did, the one thing I wanted was this big weight of black on top. I want to bury myself in paint. I want this to be a huge like weight of something. And I wonder if just black, just as black as it can get, will do that, or if I need to put some kind of texture in there. As we go, I will play with it. But today, the first step is to get the drawing down. Of course, I'm going to be drawing with pens and Sharpie, probably mostly this ink pen. What's interesting about when you draw with pens, and I don't know if I can get this to show on the video, hopefully you can see it. I'm getting some glare when I move this. The pen will always kind of like bubble up to the surface. Can you see that? Where it looks like nothing, and then if I turn it, you can kind of see some lines in there where the ceiling fan is, and actually some writing on the right side. The eyeball, you can kind of see the pen there. Hopefully you can see that. The camera's at a different angle, so I'm just trying different things. But the ink will kind of bubble through in some places, and honestly, I kind of like that. I kind of like the weirdness of it. I kind of like how it looks. Yeah, I think I've rambled on enough. I'm not sure how long that was, but what I'm going to do now is just get to drawing and fast forward, and I'll talk to you in a bit. I am recording. Okay. Yep. that area soon. Okay. I'm back. That was about 30 minutes of drawing, I think, maybe a little bit less. But I'm sitting here thinking, do I need more than this? Do I need more than what I've just put down in order to begin the painting? And I don't think I do. There's a couple things that I was thinking about throughout this, and what I pulled from the original drawing: bigger teeth, super white, all that dark, the just geometric kind of sharp shapes of the hand. I removed the ring. Didn't want the ring in there. It was a little bit distracting. Of course, like I said, I'm bringing it down. Big black up top, like I'm drowning in this darkness. I increased a lot the angularity of these fingers, kind of dipping down in between each digit. And I think I want like a long nail here for some reason. I don't know why, like scratch it into the eye almost. I can probably make these teeth a lot larger, I think. We'll see when we get into it. Dark here. I could go and darken out all the other places that are going to be dark, but that's what the image is going to do for me. I know what's going to be dark, black, hidden. One thing I'll probably do is, this is the square on the inside here that I drew out is 9 by 15.5, but I think I'm going to extend out to both sides as well. I wanted to keep the angularity of this hand here, right where the wrist kind of comes in, and get a bit of these kind of tendons standing out here in the arm. I wanted to hit that. This hand here is a bit thin there, but I kind of like it. I kind of like that it's, corpse-like. Yeah, we're going for everything death and destruction and pain and mayhem, right? So it kind of works together. It all works together. But everything I have here, let me get this, where this forehead is. There's a few things that I actually like about my anatomy. I mean, I don't mind my face. I know that's weird to say. I mean, probably a lot of people look at their face in the mirror and they go, "Oh God, you again," right? And there's been many of years that I've done that, right? Oh my goodness, what has happened? Getting older, this thing. But I don't know, I have this like really big Cro-Magnon kind of dome, really hard forehead that juts out a bit. It matches with my mental prowess. The closer that I look like a Neanderthal is probably closer to, my intelligence level. So it fits, but I like the angularity here, and I may push that a bit, like really bring it out. I love that this finger here, if on the image, these values blend in together. It's really kind of interesting. And all the shadows here that are going to happen within these fingers, they create these really awesome angular shadows, which I think are going to work well with, what I'm trying to say in this piece. Just very sharp, very angled, that kind of thing. What else was I thinking about? I don't see much of my hair here. It would be kind of nice if a lot of my hair, because I have long hair, it was kind of wrapped around some of these fingers here and kind of splayed up and about, kind of into the black a bit. Just, really, really terrible looking in a lot of ways. I think that would be nice. I might thin out this wrist and arm a bit more so it looks a little bit more corpse-like. That might be really nice. Make sure all that's going to be in shadow. But I think this is enough. I think because of the drawing that I did before, this drawing, and having that next to me has given me like a lot of clarity with where I want to go with this painting. put some value into this area. Yeah, it's really given me a lot of clarity with where I want to go with this painting. And I don't need more than that. And I'm pretty sure how I'm going to paint it. I'm not going to be painting it with a lot of broad strokes. I'm not going to go for the big masses first. I'm going to go straight with detail into specific areas and just go for the detail. I know many artists across the planet. Give me a moment, please. That's my wife at the door. I'll get back to her in just a moment because we're almost done here. But many artists say start a painting, do all the block in first, big blocky colors, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, I don't like doing that most of the time. I like going straight for the detail, especially when I have a pretty good drawing in. Yeah, you risk not having good value structure and things throughout, but I don't know, I just like working that way. If you've ever read Richard Schmid's book, Alla Prima, which if you're an oil painter, I think it's almost essential. It's this absolutely fantastic book. You'll see how he works. He doesn't even do a drawing. He's just very detailed, like straight off, just even more detailed than I would do on this. Like, even though I start with details, it's still kind of a block in that I know I will adjust later. So check out Schmidt on that, and then check out tomorrow's video where I begin painting on this. I can't wait. I'm super excited. I think I have a good message here and communication, and I think it's going to work really well. And if it doesn't, you know what? Didn't cost that much on this piece of paper. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.